Welcome to this episode of Two Tall Guys Talking Sales, where today Kevin and Sean delve into the transformative power of effective sales training and the crucial role of coaching in turning knowledge into action. They explore why many professionals undervalue sales training and provide actionable insights on how sales leaders can profoundly impact their teams through intentional follow-up and practice. Discover the essential distinction between merely learning and truly applying sales techniques to maximize potential. Tune in as we unlock strategies for ensuring that training educates and empowers sales teams to achieve and exceed their goals.
You know, Kevin, I've been through dozens, maybe hundreds, man, I hope not hundreds, at least dozens of sales training classes throughout my career. And I literally just had a salesperson whine to me. And it was whining, let's be honest. And if you're out there listening to this podcast, you know I'm talking about you. He whined to me about I didn't want to go to that sales training class that we signed him up for. And he was like, okay, maybe I'll get one thing out of the class. And I'm thinking, why in the world do sales training have such a terrible philosophy, a terrible return that a salesperson only thinks he's going to get one thing out of a one-day class? Why is that the case? And maybe you can share some wisdom in that area and help me out a little bit.
I'm glad that somebody is sharing with you some of the same things they share with me. I hear that a lot too. Why spend the money on training? And let's back away from this for a moment and say, well, it's because you're not setting your expectations accurately as a sales manager or salesperson. We get better at our craft just like a professional sports team. We practice every day for the championship game. We don't play the championship game every day. We practice and prepare for it. And if a professional athlete, because remember, we're all professional salespeople and sales leaders, if we're truly professional, we're trying to find that 1% edge. As sales leaders, our job largely is to find talent and then help them on their path to success. And a lot of times that means becoming the tiebreaker. We create the tiebreakers. So in life and in sales, in our sales life and professional walks, we have to help our teams approach deals more strategically, more intentionally, and get the most value for their time. So why not train up on that? You know, why do a bench press, right? Because you want a stronger upper body. I'm not a physiologist, but you get a stronger upper body. Why do sprints if you're a long distance runner? Because your muscles need that kind of action and activity. 1% better, 0.5% better. 1% better every day would be awesome, but 0.5% would be equally as good in our professional careers. The reason people don't get a lot out of training is because they go in with the wrong attitude, or the person who sent them there, whether that's me as a sales leader, a existing sales manager, a CEO. If you're out there listening and you're about to send somebody to training, think about what you want them to bring back and how you will test their knowledge transfer. So if you've never thought about that, think about knowledge transfer. We send kids to school to learn, right? Because I don't have the temperament to teach kids at home. That's just a given. But when we send salespeople to classes, we want them to come back with either more skills or a better understanding of the solution they're selling.
Thank you for that, Kevin. Obviously, I intentionally threw you a slow ball right across the plate so you could take it out of the park. Most salespeople, when they go to a class, they get stuck in this situation where they can't return phone calls, they can't check their voicemails, they can't get on email, and they feel like at the end of the day, or worst case at the end of the week, if it's an all-week class, that they are now behind. They have 14 voicemail messages that they haven't got to that are really important. They have 150 emails that they have to sort through and figure it out. They take another 2 weeks. If it's a 1-week class, they take another 2 weeks just to dig out from that 1-week class. And then they tend to forget about all that, everything that you just heard. I don't know the right metric, but the common metric is you forget 80% of what you heard after 2 weeks. So the reality is when you are a sales manager, a CEO of the company, if you're a small company, you don't have a sales manager, and you send somebody to class, you have to then understand that you need to reinforce everything that they learned in that class that you want them to go to. So you probably should have gone to the class yourself before you went. Probably have some idea of what they're going to learn in that class. I struggle with any VP of sales that sends their salesperson off to class and they've never been through the class. It's like, well, how are you going to coach on that topic? Because it's the coaching after the fact that reinforces the entire attitude and the daily behavior of what you learned in the class. Let me give you a quick example. I teach MedPick. I'm talking about MedPick here. I teach MedPick to just about every one of my clients. I teach MedPick to people that aren't my clients. I'm not the fractional VP for their company. MedPick is easy to understand. It's 9 things to understand. I can explain it to anybody within an hour, but it takes a lifetime to perfect. And if you haven't been coached and constantly reinforced in all of the details, and are you sure that's really the economic buyer? By the way, the E is the economic buyer. Are you really sure that's the economic buyer? Did that person really fit the role of the economic buyer in your client? Oh, they didn't. Well, maybe you should go see the economic buyer and go find that person. That constant reinforcement has to happen in order for MedPick or anything that you learn to be reinforced constantly. There's a reason why teachers in high school and in grade school, they'll teach a subject and then they'll teach that same subject and they'll teach that same thing again. And then the next thing that they talk about will build on that old one. So they have to reinforce all the basic things that they learned before. This really happens a lot in mathematics and sciences and whatever, where they build on what you knew. So they spend a lot of time making sure you get the basics right. And just like there's common great coaches out there in football that start to practice at the beginning of the season, say, gentlemen, this is a football. Now, one of the greatest coaches of all time started that, but a lot of coaches still do that today, and they probably should. They stick with the basics. They reinforce the basics over and over and over again so that you can get to that next level.
And the next level is where we're all aiming, whether it's football or if it's John Wooden and inverting the pyramid. I mean, it's start with those fundamentals and build upon them. So, Sean, why doesn't sales training stick? Like we talk about, okay, if we're going to be out of the seat, this goes sales training, conferences, trade shows, same thing. You're still out of your traditional, typical weekly routine of selling and prospecting and demonstrating and scoping and solution. I mean, you're out of that pattern for a week or more. So when you're through that pattern interrupt, now you've got to get everything fixed and back on track. So the reason training doesn't stick is because it's not integrated into your normal week. You touched on something when you were talking before you gave the football analogy. I want to make sure that everybody heard this. Sales training is different than sales coaching. So say it again, training is not coaching. Coaching reinforces the training. You learn your multiplication tables, training, so that you can apply them in algebra, coaching, right? They build on each other. So the idea that you send somebody to a class, to a training, and they come back and they know the skill or the product or the feature set is not a reasonable expectation. You send them to a class, send them to a training to be exposed to the process or methodology. You expose them. The coaching is what you do, and you supplement on an ongoing basis a timeline to make sure they get it and apply it and use it. As sales leaders, you and I approach businesses and we do things like ask what expectations do you have for today? Same thing happens in training. Same thing happens in coaching. When we're leading a business, we talk about what did you get from today? What's your takeaway? What's your application? I have a fun saying, kind of gets people laughing, is that, hey, all this training and talking is great, but we got to sell something before lunch, right? Nothing happens until something is sold. So we still have to take our core job and do it. Like the training is a part of what we do in the periphery of our job. We as salespeople and sales leader have to sell and lead. So getting back to the core of what we do and why we do it is really important for anybody listening out there. If you're a sales manager, leader, owner, founder that's trying to encourage or reignite the burning desire and flame for your team, let's start simple, right? Go back to those fundamentals. Start talking about, are you doing the things that matter? Think about behaviors. Prospecting. Are you prospecting? Or are you just waiting by the phone? Are you networking to meet new people? When you show up to a networking event, how are you showing up? What are the things you want to take away? What's your plan? What do you want others to take away that they learned about you? right? Are we doing those? Are we trying to advance deals through a designed sales process? Is that sales process designed and aligned to the way a customer buys? It doesn't matter what we want to sell or how we want to sell it. We train, again, training. We train on a process. We coach to make sure the process is being followed.
I think that's fantastic. I'm going to go back to sports again, and I apologize to everybody that isn't a sports fan out there. But if you've ever gone to a professional golf match, a PGA tournament, and you watch somebody warm up on the practice green before the event, it's a great way to get close to those tour pros and see your heroes and whatever. You get to see them warm up a little bit. You always find that there's 2 or 3 or 4 people standing around them. And they're not just standing there taking pictures or talking to each other. They're actually helping the player improve his swing or her swing. That morning of the event, they're literally watching the swing. They'll stop the player. They'll stop the athlete and say, you're a little bit off. Hold it a little bit this way. Fix your posture a little bit this way. Your toe is pointed a little bit out or a little bit in, and we didn't want to work on that right now. All of those things happen every day. These coaches, that's what they are, travel with a professional, a person that is on top of the game. There's only 125 people in the PGA Tour. They are traveling with the best 100+ people playing golf today, and they are helping him or her get better every single day of the tournament. Not just every single day, but every single day of the tournament. And then at the end of the day, what do? They go back to the range and they do the exact same thing again. So the whole idea of constant coaching, not constant training, constant coaching to reinforce the whole efforts of what you're going to do, that is what a good sales manager, a good leader of a sales team is supposed to do. And that is why you go to training so that then it can be reinforced, then it can grow. And if you're only doing one great idea per day for training, you need to step it up a little bit and go for 10, 15. I can teach you in 15 minutes, which hopefully we did. In 15 minutes, I hope I can give you a good idea that you can use to improve your game. If that's all you needed was one thing, then just listen to this podcast.
Sean, you're a master just weaving that in there. Come back for more. Hit the like and subscribe button. But I really want to partner on to your golf analogy. I think that's a really great visualization, mental exercise. On those practice tees and practice greens, they're not just using one club. They're not just out there banging drivers trying to outdrive the end of the driving range. Short irons, mid-range irons, long irons, hybrids, putting, right? They're doing different distances on putting. If you take that and lay that over a sales process, you're practicing opening doors, cold calls, messaging, prospecting, developing a referral network, getting, stages. You're going from a discovery meeting to a scoping meeting, a scoping to a presentation to close, going back to someone who was improperly scoped and redoing the scoping to get it more accurate if we're not meeting expectations. All of these skills need to be, here it comes, role played. And for those of you who just, your eyes rolled back in your head, I didn't say call report, I just said role play. But for those of you who have a strict aversion to role playing, think about practice, right? Use the golf analogy. Practice makes easy. Let that sink in. Not perfect. Practice makes easy. So if you're wondering why, to bring this full circle, if you're wondering why your sales training isn't sticking or isn't being widely adopted and utilized, it's probably because the coaching isn't reinforcing the training. So we're almost out of time here, so I'm going to wrap us up with a few things. Sean and I are VPs of sales. We've been doing this for a long, long time. We got lots of experience. There's probably not a sales scenario you can bring to us that we haven't had to solve for in the past. We're that kind of resource for your business. So if you want to avoid 10 years of skin knees and 100 quarters of really struggling just to make your quota, think about how sales training, coaching, and leadership can impact the viability of your ability to grow. Hiring us is what we want you to do, but in large part, if you take away nothing else from today, take away the idea that you can get better just by working on the core skills that you know will drive success. And with that, we'll hit the 15-minute mark and we will say adieu until the next episode of Two Tall Guys Talking Sales. In the interim, if there's a conversation you'd like to have privately about your situation, please reach out to us. Sean and I are really active on LinkedIn. We'd love to meet you there and engage your challenges and problems and see if we can help. With that, happy selling.
What an enlightening episode we've had today. Sean and Kevin really unpacked the challenges and solutions to integrating training into sales teams' daily routines. The tall guys highlighted how crucial it is for training to not just be an isolated event, but a continuous part of a salesperson's workflow, akin to an athlete's daily practice. This approach helps ensure that skills are learned, mastered, and retained, making each training session count even more. The significant actionable item from this episode, establishing a structured follow-up coaching plan, cannot be overstated. This method transforms new knowledge into habitual, effective sales practices. By implementing this strategy today, sales leaders can ensure that their team's training sticks, boosting overall productivity and success. Remember, if you need expert advice on sales, sales management, or business growth, don't hesitate to contact Sean or Kevin. The show notes have all the contact information you need. Until next Tuesday at 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time, happy selling!